Hi, so I am Katie.
Hold up.
Oh, sorry.
Hello, travelers. Welcome to Reach the World. For over 20 years, Reach the World has used virtual exchange to inspire youth to become curious, confident global citizens. My name is Tim, and as part of Reach the World's efforts to support educators and families during the COVID-19 pandemic, we're sharing free live stream discussions with some of our standout travelers from recent years. You can find an updated calendar of live stream events and much more at athome.reachtheworld.org. Today, I'm very excited to be talking with Fulbright Scholar Kathryn Hegarty. Katie shared her experiences conducting research on sea turtle nests in Malaysia through a recent Reach the World virtual exchange. And if you haven't already read her virtual exchange articles from Malaysia, make that your first stop after watching this event. We'll add a link in the YouTube chat sidebar so you can get there quickly and see all the great stories and photos that she shared from her time in Malaysia. Also, please use the chat bar to let us know you're here today and share any questions you may have for Katie as we go. We're also lucky to have two on-camera students today with us, Sophie and Mia, and they'll get a chance to ask questions as well. So without any further delay, I want to turn things over to Katie. Hey, Katie.
Hi, thanks for that great introduction. I'm Katie, and I am the traveler from Malaysia. So I live in the US currently. I'm from Rhode Island, but I took a very long plane trip a few years back all the way to Malaysia, over 30 hours to go research some sea turtles, which was a really incredible experience. I had a lot of fun doing that and I learned a lot. And so I'm happy to be able to share some of that with you guys today. I was specifically stationed in Terengganu, which is a small area in Malaysia on the eastern corner. I spent a lot of my time there in a small turtle sanctuary, which was right in the bay. You can imagine a little horseshoe shape. I was right here. We didn't have electricity most of the time. We had some solar panels. We had a few huts, just the bare necessities to be able to do our research, but it was really all about the turtles when we were there. When I was on the island, we had groups of volunteers that would come in weekly, and that was really incredible experience because as someone who is very interested in conservation, it's such a great opportunity to be able to share the research that you're doing with others and be able to work productively to help do that conservation work together. That was really special. We would have our conservation crew talk to all of the volunteers. We give them a little briefing about what we were doing. We were really helping the green sea turtles, which are one of my favorite sea turtles. They are pretty big guys. They're about 3 to 4 feet big. They are beautiful in the water. They're very graceful. And we also had the unique opportunity to see them on land, which is a little bit more difficult for them, but they still make the trek nonetheless. We also were working with some hawksbill sea turtles, and those are really beautiful as well. They're a little bit smaller, think about 2 to 3 feet. Because they're a little bit smaller, they're a little bit more graceful on land. But it's still a push for them. When I was there, we had a fun opportunity. We were able to make some little models of the turtles that we were working with, and I have a model that I made of a hawksbill hatchling. This is about the right size. They're pretty small, as you can see, maybe about 1 inch or 2, but they have a really beautiful mottled shell, just like that. Maybe this is a little bit more colorful than normal, but just to prove that they are colorful nonetheless. I was lucky when we were on the island, we had a hawksbill that washed up on the shore, sadly, and died. And one of the scoots, which is this part of the turtle, you see these little scoots here, fell off, and they were very kind to let me take that home with them. So this is a true hawksbill scoot, which is very special, one of my prized possessions right there. And these turtles are really important to work with, the hawksbill, and the green sea turtle because they are both endangered. And that means that there are not a lot of them out there today. And we wonder, how did we come to this point? How did we let these giant sea creatures dwindle in number? And it's because they have such beautiful shells, because they also need to breathe air. So when they are swimming around in the ocean most of their lives, they also have to come up for air. So they'll get caught in fishing nets. And at that point, they can't come up for air. So unfortunately, they drowned, even though they're a marine creature. So what I was trying to do when I was there was I was really interested in looking at their nesting habitats. On Shigar Hotong, which was that tiny little island I was talking about, that little bay, we're very lucky to still have some really high numbers of green sea turtles and hawksbill relatively compared to other regions. And so that provides a really amazing opportunity to be able to study these turtles in their natural habitat and see what their preferences are when they have all the opportunity to nest wherever they like. So I got to study their nests, see where they wanted to go, and try and figure out what makes that perfect nesting habitat for a turtle. And I am going to share some photos with you guys in regards to that. Let's see. Okay. Welcome to my computer. So in order to get to Shigar Hotong, we wanted to take these little tiny boats, as you can see right here. These boats are really small, they're very fast, they're really fun. The captains, they really have no fear. They just crash right over the waves and they'll take you right out to the island. We had a really fun 20-minute boat ride out there, and they always like to try and scare me on the way out. Worked every time. This is a picture of the bay. So we would come right around the corner, right around Turtle Rock over here, which is where the photo is taken from. And our little base was right here by that palm tree. We'd zoom around. And as you can see, you see how the water is a little bit darker in some areas and lighter in others? That's because some areas there's a reef right under the water. And that was really beautiful. I'm going to show you some photos of some of the cool things I found in the reef when I was out there. This is a picture from our camp. So once we came around that turtle rock right over here and around the other rocks, we got to hang out in these nice hammocks and wait for kind of nightfall, which is when we got very active in working with those turtles. During the night, we would go out and we would want to monitor the beach for turtles. So what we would do is we would all sleep on the sand right under the stars. We'd be patrolling the beach hourly. So we're trying to see, is there a turtle that's coming up? And how are we going to see a turtle? You know, it's very dark. There are no lights. When you do use a light, you want to use a red flashlight because that is the best frequency to avoid disturbing the turtle. It makes it very hard for them to see, but it gives us just enough light, not too much, to be able to find them easily. So we would look for their tracks, and then we'd try to follow them very cautiously to find the turtle. Once we found the turtle, we would want to monitor her movements. Nesting is a multi-step process, and it really is a process. The turtles, they need to body pit, so they have to dig in the sand like this, and then they have to start digging a nest chamber, and then they have to cover the whole thing up. And mind you, remember these turtles are huge. The hawksbill being 2 to 3 feet, the green turtle 3 to 4, and with a lot of mass to move, it's a real process for them, but they get it done. And as you can see, this is a stake, and that stake is important for us to be able to find the nest later. The number says which nest it is that we've identified. The date was when it was laid, and the number at the bottom is the turtle's identification. You might be wondering, how do we know who these turtles are? Right? They all kind of look similar, but part of the process is really important to learn who they are. So we want to tag them right here on their little flippers with these tags that are identification tags, and they allow us to learn more about that turtle, to learn more about the population as a whole. So that was a really cool, important aspect of our research. and the moment you guys have been waiting for, a little baby. This is one of the hatchlings, and part one and part two, they're emerging from the shell. Um, as you can see, the egg, it's not like a traditional chicken egg like you'd think of at the supermarket. It's actually kind of rubbery. Um, and you can see that as the turtle emerges. And you might want to think, why does it need to be rubbery, right? Well, when the mother lays the eggs, they fall out of the mother into the nest. And if they were very fragile, they would all break. But because they're a little bit rubbery, it allows the turtles to survive, to grow, and to eventually emerge like these little guys right here. And these are some of the cool friends I made when I was snorkeling. Do you guys recognize these? Do they look maybe a little bit like Nemo? Well, I found him and his friend, or maybe his dad. They were abundant in the reef, and they're really beautiful, and they're hiding in some anemones. If you remember, they like to hang out in there. That's their home in Finding Nemo, and in real life as well. And I was fortunate one day to see a giant turtle. And this one is one of my favorites. This is a green sea turtle. They're the turtles that I was able to help out the most there. My research focused on these guys. And this is just a nice one hanging out in the reef, enjoying a beautiful day. At night, we would sleep on the beach. So this was our beach. And those are those little fast boats that we took out to the beach. We'd sleep under the stars, so just on these little sleeping mats. The beautiful constellations overhead is always lovely. And in the morning, we would make each other some breakfast, which was fun. We didn't have refrigeration out there. We had something that had been an ice chest at one point, but no longer. So we made do. We got weekly groceries. And then we would go out in the morning again, and you guys remember this, those little nest stakes. We would look for the nests, monitor them. And that was really important too, because we wanted to make sure that no predators would get to the nests. So as you can see, there are a lot of cages over the nests to keep them safe, to prevent some predators from being able to dig down and attack the nests. And we walk the beach every day to see the progress.
Hey, Katie, can I interject really quickly? Malik on the live stream wants to know if you saw any land animals, and that might feed into what you just said. It looked like you were protecting the nest from possible predators. What would those other animals have been?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for asking, Malika. We were also home to some monitor lizards. Monitor lizards are very big. Usually they're about 2 to 3 feet long. I saw one that was about 5 feet long, very big. If you think of a kimono dragon, those are a little bit more well known, I feel. They like to prey on turtle nests. So they'll come out, they'll smell around. They kind of have this incredible swagger when they walk down the beach, and they're looking for turtle nests, and we're looking to keep them away. Some of the other predators that we would see would be crabs. So as the baby turtles emerge, they like to emerge around dusk at night. And that's important because it helps prevent the number of predators that they may run into, but crabs are one that would come out at that time. We also would have birds that would be able to get them as well. And once they're in the water, the predators don't end, unfortunately. There are also sharks that will eat them. And I know when you think of a shark, you think, oh no, but for us, it was okay for me to keep swimming in the reef because these sharks were only about 1 foot long, and I don't think they could do much damage to us, but unfortunately for the turtles, they did pose quite a threat.
All right. Do you want to bring in some more questions, or is there a little bit more you want to get through first?
Yeah, if people have more questions, I'd be excited to talk about them.
Yeah, we've got Mia and Sophie on the call, and I want to, if you don't mind coming out of screen share just for a second, we'll take a couple questions, and maybe it will lead to some other things you wanted to talk about. But Sophie, why don't I come to you first, and I'll let you ask your question to Katie.
Um, Katie, why did you decide to study turtles in the first place?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I've always loved turtles. I think they're just really cute and incredible. When I was in college, I started working more directly with turtles. I did an internship and I thought, wow, this is exciting. The turtles that I was working with were diamondback terrapins and they're also endangered. So when I found that out, I was wondering, how can I help them, right? You know, there are these beautiful turtles I want to help. So I started to kind of pinpoint my research to help them, again, looking at nesting conditions. And then I thought, wow, this was a great experience. Can I help other turtle populations as well too? So I looked for opportunities to do that and I wound up in Malaysia.
Great question, Sophie. Mia, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, so have you ever found an egg that didn't hatch? If so, what did you do with it?
That's another great question. So yes, unfortunately, not all of the eggs in nests will hatch. And some of that actually leads into my second part of my research, which was looking at why those eggs didn't hatch. And some of the reason can be because of infection. So the nest, because there's so many eggs in such a small space, sometimes a fungal infection can spread. And that would prevent, it would kind of eat on the little turtle that's developing and take away that energy from the developing turtle and actually kill it. So unfortunately, there were a few eggs that had gone bad. And we wanted to study that too to see what causes that and is there some way to prevent that? And what type of, I don't know, fungus are we working with that we need to target?
Can you tell us a little bit about how you studied that?
Yeah, so it was a really cool process. I was taking samples from the nest, looking at moisture content, substrate type. So substrate is looking at the sand. What are the components of the sand? Is it a gravelly sand? Is it a very fine sand? And understanding these different parameters and correlating them with the amount of infection, so the amount of eggs that didn't hatch that had the fungal infection is an important kind of thing to examine. And then also to pinpoint again what type of fungus we're dealing with, because there are many different fungi out there, but they're not all necessarily bad, but which ones are really predating, so which ones are really attacking these little hatchlings.
Very cool. Yeah, I know your research was fascinating and it was done sort of between the beach and a lab, right? Where did you do most of the analysis of the nest sand?
Yeah, so as a Fulbright researcher, it's a really incredible opportunity because you get to work with usually a university in another nation or country rather. And I got to work with UMT, which is the University of Malaysia, Terengganu. They were very kind and I had some faculty mentors there. I made a lot of friends who were able to help me get in touch with the appropriate lab space. And then when I got into the fungal research aspect, they were actually able to help put me in contact with other universities in the area. One on the western side of Malaysia called UMP, and they were able to help me take all of my samples from UMT to the other university and run DNA analysis. So looking at like the taxonomics, so trying to figure out basically the name of the fungi associated with these infections.
Very interesting. We have a great audience on our live stream today. So I see you there, added some questions to the chat bar, and I'd be happy to pass them along to Katie today. And I'm going to go back to, let's go back to Sophie. Sophie, do you have another question you'd like to ask Katie?
Do you know how many types of turtles there are?
Yeah, there are many different types of turtles. For sea turtles, they're about 7. But as I was saying, I worked with terrapins as well. That's a different kind of turtle. So sea turtles, they stay in the sea. Terrapins are really cool because they live in brackish water. Now, what does that mean? That's a mixture of salt water and fresh water. And that's a really difficult environment to inhabit because the changing salinity, so the amount of salt in the water is always kind of shifting. And so to have a body that's able to be resilient and thrive in an area like that is really incredible. So sea turtles, they're always in the sea. We have 7 of them in Malaysia. We had 4 in Terengganu. Historically, we had the green sea turtle, the hawksbill, and then we had the leatherback in the past and the olive ridley. But unfortunately, the leatherback are no longer really seen in Malaysia, and that's because they've been hunted and a lot of their eggs have been used as medicinal purposes and that kind of thing. And so we just don't see them in the numbers that we did or at all really. And that's devastating because that area of the world used to be a hub for leatherback turtles. So that's why this conservation work is so important when we still have meaningful populations of these endangered species and we can still make a difference and make an impact with the research we're doing.
Yeah, such a great question, Sophie. Thank you. Mia, let's go back to you for your question.
So, how do you tell a male and a female turtle apart?
That's another good question, right? Because they all kind of look a little bit similar. It's usually in regards to size and if you're looking at the length of their tail as well too. For green sea turtles, the males tend to be a bit larger and they also have a longer tail. And the females smaller with a smaller tail. But you can also tell if it is a sea turtle, if they come to land, then it's definitely a female. The males never come back to land after they've left as hatchlings. They're in the sea forever. And the females, they come back every now and then. They take a break every few years, but they'll come and visit their natal nesting home. So that means that they'll leave the beach, but they'll still come back to the same one. Even a few years later, they're able to find it.
Amazing. Great question, Mia. Thank you. We had a couple questions on the live stream. One is there was a reference to Kuala Lumpur, a big city in Malaysia. And I wonder if you just speak briefly about what it's like to be doing research in another country, whether there were language barriers, what it was like to go between such a remote beach and busy Malaysian cities. What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, that's a really great question too. It was really amazing to be able to inhabit all of these different kind of nooks of another country. Kuala Lumpur is very industrialized. It's very modern. There are lots of malls and everything, and that's where I landed initially. And then I took a small plane to Kuala Terengganu. And Kuala Terengganu is one of the more conservative states in Malaysia. So there's a lot more kind of strict religion there. And the people are so lovely. And it just is a little bit different in that there are not as many malls, that they have more you would hear like the mosques, they have this call to prayer 5 times daily, which was really cool. And so they will have that broadcast on the island. It was so remote, you don't really, religion is out of the picture, malls are out of the picture, and it's really just turtles are in the picture. So you really get a little bit of everything. And I would also help facilitate a bi-monthly hatchling release program at a local resort. So that was even another kind of world that I would inhabit for a few days, where you'd see a lot of tourists. And it was most interesting to me, I think, to see how conservation was conducted in these different realms and how much of a priority it would be or not in these different areas as well.
Very interesting. Great question. Yeah, all students, including our live stream audience, great questions all around. One of the other questions we had from our live stream was, or from our online audience was, what sort of technology did you use as part of your research? Or was it kind of a tech-free when you were on the beach?
That's a really good question. Yeah, we didn't have Wi-Fi. We had electricity at times. So instruments on the beach were a little bit limited. We did have GPS, which was important for locating the different nests and being able to map out nesting preferences over the beach. But a lot of it in the field was more low tech. So you're right, we were taking samples so we could go analyze them back in the lab and use kind of more complex equipment there to look at genetic sequencing and substrate type, that kind of thing.
All right, very interesting. Mia, Sophie, do either of you have another question you want to ask? Just raise your hand if you do. That's probably the best way to show me. Oh, Mia's hand went straight up. Mia, what would you like to ask?
So, Katie, how big is the biggest turtle you've ever seen, and what type of turtle was it?
That's a good question. It was probably a green sea turtle during my trip to Malaysia, probably about 4.5 feet big. And they can weigh up to 400 pounds, but of course, we were not trying to lift them. But actually, when I was really little, my grandparents, they live in Florida. And so one day I was walking the beach and I saw a giant leatherback sea turtle. And these happen to be the largest sea turtles that they have out there. And that was probably maybe about 6.5 feet long. It was huge. And what's really interesting about leatherbacks too is instead of that hard shell that you see, with a hawksbill or a green sea turtle, is that, like their name, their backs are leathery and smooth. So it's a very interesting, different kind of morphology or shape to their body, and a very big one at that.
Great question, Mia. Thank you. I would like to sort of get the last question in here. Sophie, if you have one more, let me know. Otherwise, we can drop it in after my question. But you are now, I know, back in Rhode Island, and we're all sort of stuck inside because of COVID-19. What will be your next adventure after you are released from your home and free to roam again?
Oh, that's a great question too. So yeah, I don't know. I'm looking for the next adventure out there. I'm trying to plan vacations, but difficult at this time. Right now, I'm still getting to work with animals, which is really exciting. I'm working as a veterinary technician, so a little different animals than the ones that I'm used to, but I love cats and dogs and rabbits and the occasional ferret that we see. So that's been a lot of fun, and it's been nice that we've been able to continue working and carrying out that work during this difficult time. So
awesome. Yeah, sounds great. Sophie, do you want to ask one more, or are you good? You would. Okay, I see you shaking your head. All right, go for it.
What happens to the turtles in the winter?
that's a really good question too. Thank you guys for all these awesome questions today, by the way. So in the winter, Malaysia is right at the equator. So let's start there. That's a really warm place, and it's warm all year round. But you're right, the turtles don't stay there all year round. They'll come to nest, they come back to their nesting beaches, and then they go away and they migrate. They ride the ocean currents, they leave us for a while, and then after a few years, they come back. So they go to warmer places, places with more food, places that are more preferable to their kind of lifestyle at that time. And then when they need the nesting beach, they'll come back to Shigar Hotang.
Fantastic. What a great question for us to end on. I really want to thank Mia and Sophie for joining us on camera today. Thank you for your wonderful questions. Katie, thank you so much for joining us today. This was a lot of fun. I learned a lot about sea turtles in Malaysia from you. And thank you to our entire YouTube live stream audience for joining us today. You can join us again for one of several exciting Reach the World live stream events left to go this week. We'll be heading virtually to New Zealand, Mozambique, Chile, Mexico, Taiwan, and Brazil, and we'd love to have you join us. You can participate by joining any one of those live stream events, and you can find a complete list of upcoming Reach the World events at home.reachtheworld.org. So for those of us who are on the call, we can wave goodbye to Katie. Thank Katie for participating, sharing her experiences. And Katie, thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much.